Good morning, everyone. It's Tom at Innovia Consulting. Hope you're all well. I see quite a few people. We're a few minutes early, so we are gonna hold just for a second or two before I start the official presentation. But looking forward to visiting with all of you a little bit on the requisition worksheet inside of Business Central today. Certainly happy to answer questions. So as you think of them, if you'll put them in the questions box, I'm happy to try to get to those, and I'll keep my eye on that questions box as we move along. And if we're at a spot where I can show the answer right away or address the answer right away, I will, and otherwise I'll get to them at the end of the session. While we generally schedule our sessions for an hour, we have really gotten a lot of feedback from our users that having a full hour session is really a bit much. I suspect we're probably 15 or 20 minutes this morning, but certainly I'll take as much time as you'd all like to spend if there's questions afterwards. So looks like we got another 2 minutes here, and then we'll get underway. All right. Well, we'll get started. So thank you all once again for joining us today for our review of the requisition worksheet inside of Dynamics Business Central. My name is Tom Doran. I'm with Innovia Consulting, and they couldn't get anybody really intelligent to run this one, so they asked me to do it. And so I'm going to do the best I can, but I suspect it'll be a good review. Many times when we get out to visit with existing NAV or Business Central users, when we encounter the folks in purchasing or even sometimes in the planning department, it's shocking the number of folks that are still relying on Excel to manage their inventory. And so we're going to spend just a little bit of time today talking about the use of the requisition worksheet, and then what we do in our item setup to make this function the way we want it to inside of our companies. And so, before I jump right to the items, I am going to show you quick, because many people do like to see reports. I'm of the opinion you can see this in the requisition or planning worksheet, but in my report inbox, I've scheduled, so if I were a purchaser, there's a report called availability projection. And so if I wanted to see that report every day, I could schedule that to run. And each morning, I could walk through and see for each item what we have in terms of demand, what's on hand, and what we ought to do about it in order to respond to what our customers are asking us for, or any parameters we have set inside our system. I don't actually subscribe to the idea that that's the best way to do it, but some people like to have some paper. Some folks like to be able to walk and visually see what's going on, and that is a good report to start with. So if we take a look at items, because the ability to use the requisition worksheet really starts with item setup. And so within our system, I'm going to restrict my items here to just my food items so that we don't have too much data on the screen. And so, I've got some items here for a little bit of vanilla ice cream, and I want to take a look at how I have them set up from a supply perspective. So I make the vanilla, but I purchase all of these ingredients. So if I go in and pick on my chocolate chips as an example, it's going to show us first, when we take a snapshot, it's going to show us that I do have some on a PO. But when I look at my replenishment, the first thing I need to set up is that it is in fact a purchased item. So I tell the system that this is an item I buy, and if I have a default vendor and I want it to populate the sheet with that default vendor information, then I need to identify, who do I normally buy this from? You can see I've set up a cross-reference here. So if I like to provide the vendor their item number on my purchase documents, I will still enter internally that I've got a 767 item number, but on my purchase document, it will print their item number and their description if I choose. And then obviously my purchase unit of measure. And then from there, I go into my planning. And so this is really what makes the system tick. So when I determine how I want my planning worksheet or my requisition worksheet to make recommendations for me, this is what's going to drive all of that. So how much quantity do I want to keep in stock? While some people work from a lead time, in this case, I've got a week in there, most of our customers work from a safety stock quantity. And there's a lot of theories on what that quantity should be. I'm not actually going to go into that. It's beyond the scope of this session. But in this case, I've said, look, I want to keep 200 pounds in stock all the time. Then my lot accumulation period. So, and if you haven't used these little tip boxes on the Business Central screen, they're pretty handy. Control F1 will get you to more help, but it starts to tell you how we want to accumulate things into a single order. One of the biggest pieces of pushback we get from early users of the system is, oh man, I tried to use the requisition worksheet, or I tried to use the planning worksheet, and it just gives me too much information. I can't take it. And so, we find that if you use these lot accumulation periods, if you use the quantities, then it allows you to group things into more manageable buckets. So in this case, I have zero in here, which basically says, look, I'm going to try to recommend it every time I see you need it. If I put a month in here, then it's going to aggregate everything that it sees for that period, so for this month, and it's going to recommend a single purchase order for that item. Rescheduling period. So again, this is where we, again, here there's a lot of noise. So people will say, oh my goodness, it's telling me to cancel this purchase order and create a new purchase order and always change something else. And so you can set this so that it either never tells you to change something, or say, look, if it doesn't affect this order by more than 3 days, 3 weeks, a month, whatever time period you think is important and you would want to know, you can set that here, and then the system either will or will not tell you based on what you've indicated. And then again, we can set minimum order quantities, maximum order quantities, order multiples. These are all the factors that go into defining how we want the system to recommend our purchase orders. So in this case, and in most of our customers, lot for lot is how they do it. And what that means is I want you to look at all my sales order demand that would drive demand for my chocolate chips here. I want you to look at all of my production that's in place and look at all of those factors when I recommend a purchase order for my chocolate chips. There's several other options. I'm not going to go through every one of them, but probably the most common that isn't lot for lot would be order. And that means I want to peg. So if I've got a special order item, or maybe an item that we don't want to stock, but we do have it in our catalog or on our website. And so I might change that one to order that says, look, I'm not going to recommend anything to the purchaser unless I actually have demand for this item. So in this case, I'm going to keep this one lot for lot. And then I'm going to go in and run the planning or the requisition worksheet. So we'll get out of our item card and we'll go back to our screen. And so you'll see on my purchaser, so I'm in the purchaser's role center, right? So it's showing me orders that need to be confirmed. It's showing me all my inbound stuff. It's been set up to give a purchaser the information they need to do their job. If you have multiple people responsible for your purchasing, then we typically recommend that you set up separate batches. And so what that does is, I could have a batch called Tom's batch. And if I had, Alan that did other purchasing for different commodities, we could have Alan's batch. And then that way we can each be working within our own journal and not stepping on top of each other. But in this case, I'll go to process, and I'm going to edit my worksheet. So in this case, you can see I've been working with these items, but I want to start from scratch. And so I'm going to select all these items, and I'm going to delete them. And this is another important thing to remember when I'm looking at any of the worksheets, but in this case, the requisition worksheet. Just because something's here and I delete it doesn't mean it's gone forever. It just means that in this particular case, these are not the items I want to work with. I want to clean my sheet up. I want to narrow it down to just the things I want to do. And then when I run the sheet the next time, if the demand is still there, those items are going to come back. So the system won't allow you, I'm using my air quotes now, but the system won't allow you to forget that I have an item that needs to be purchased. So I come in and I'm going to calculate my plan. So this is going to come in, and so I have several options here. It's usually handy. Most purchasers use similar options and filters every time, and so I like to keep that set to say, hey, remember what I did the last time. I can put a date range in here. So if I plan for a particular time horizon, maybe it's a month. In people that have really long lead times, sometimes it's 6 months. And in many cases, if I'm buying a variety of different items, it could be that I'm going to run this sheet a couple of times. So I might run it for a month in my short lead time items and set my item category or my item number filters, or however I want to filter that set of short lead time items, and say, okay, I'm going to do all my purchasing for the stuff I can get quick. Then I'm going to open my horizon up. I'm going to reset my filter. So maybe I want to say, hey, look, I've got some stuff that needs to come in on a boat from, from the east. And so, I'm going to set that lead time to 6 months. And then I'm going to set my filter for just that category of items. And when I do that, then I'm purchasing just for my long lead time items. So it allows us to manage that purchase process and not sort of try to commingle everything, because the way I handle my short lead time items is very likely quite different than how I handle my long lead time items. Similar to many of the filters that you see, you can set your filters however you choose to set them. Freight type is another common one. So if I'm trying to get a full truckload, I might set it to my particular carrier and then see what I bring in using that carrier as an example. Item category codes are very common in terms of what I set. So in this case, I want to look at my food items, and I let it rip. And so now it's going out and it's looking at all of the demand that I have, and it's saying, okay, what should I do? And so in this case, we'll see that I've got a couple of purchase orders out here. So we were looking at my chocolate chips earlier. So when I click on this, it's showing me, whoops, let me click away. So it's showing me my item. It's showing me the vendor I buy it from. It's giving me the vendor item number. And so these are things that are trying to help our users figure out, why is the system telling me to do what it's telling me to do. And so in this case, it's like, okay, so I thought I was supposed to buy 110. Why is it telling me to cancel this? And so if I go in and I want to look at my tracking lines, it's going to pop up. It'll show me, whoops, did I not do that right? Oh, maybe I didn't set that one up to tracking lines. All right, so it would pop in, but in this case, so if we remember, if I go back to my item, I've got 310 on a purchase order. I don't have any on a production order. I've got no demand for this item. And under my planning worksheet, I said my safety stock's only 200. So basically the system's saying, look, you've got a couple POs out here, but based on how you set this item up, I don't think that you need to buy any of these. I've also set my freeze frame so that I can scroll a little bit and see what's going on. Again, so for my vodka, same idea. So you can tell that I've got some super high-powered ice cream here because it's got vodka in it. But it's telling me, okay, you've got 200 that you need to buy. And so again, why is this? And so I'm gonna try this one more time because I thought I set that up. All right. So I did something wrong there. But it should pop up and show me my untracked quantity. And so again, so my safety stock is 200. I don't actually have any demand, but I've run out when I ran my last production order. And so it's telling me that I need to buy it to bring it back up to my safety stock. Again, so my sugar, same concept. So it's taking me through all of my items and telling me what I need to do, how much I should have. It is defaulted to accepting the action message, which means I want to do something. But maybe I don't want to do anything. So I could edit these. I could delete one or two. I can alter my quantities. So, maybe I know there's a big order coming, but the system doesn't see it yet, but my favorite sales rep swears to me that, one of my market customers is definitely going to buy a bunch, and so I need to bump my orders up. So I'm going to plan ahead. I'm going to bring some in, even though the system doesn't know about it. If I wanted to ignore those two, I could ignore those two, and then I could say, all right, I want you to carry out the action message. And so then once I do that, it'll go through and it'll say, all right, what do you want me to do? And if I turn this on, so maybe in some cases I've got orders that I automatically want to print and have go out. And so it'll automatically print those and it would go to my purchaser to send out to my vendors. Now, another tool that goes hand in hand with this requisition worksheet is a planning worksheet. So if you're in a production environment, it's going to look very similar to the requisition worksheet. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to calculate the plan. I'm going to put my date range in just like I did the last time. I'm going to use my food category, and I'm going to let it rip. Now it's telling me, hey, look, you got a problem with one of these items. So it's letting you know I've got an item here, turns out it's my chocolate chip cookies, that doesn't know how to handle for this work center in my production environment. So I need to go fix that calendar before it's going to let me do anything. But in this case, this would have told me to actually manufacture the ice cream if I needed to manufacture ice cream. And now it's telling me to purchase the items. And the reason I'm showing you this is that in many environments, there is sort of an all-up planner. So this is the person that is responsible for our overall production and inventory planning. And so they are going to quarterback the planning worksheet. And then when they get done, and I say, all right, I'm gonna check all of these, and I want them to move forward, and they go into their process. I again going to carry out the action message, except now my screen looks a little different, right? So I may send out my production orders to the production department, but instead of actually making the purchase orders, I want to pass this over to the person who's responsible for the worksheet. So I want to go find that worksheet that I have, and I pick my default worksheet. And so what this does is it passes the purchasing items over to the person who's actually responsible for making those purchases. So this is a little bit more robust piece of functionality in environments that want to do full MRP and have some production and things going on, but it still uses the requisition worksheet functionality to help us better manage our purchasing and kind of get us out of our worksheet or our spreadsheets. And so, whoops, I must not have done the top one. So carry out my action message. I'll send that to the rec worksheet. Well, I have to set them both. Whoops, sorry. Try that again. All right, so all of my items went where they were supposed to go. And if I open up my worksheet, they're back here because somebody sent these over to me to purchase or talk to the vendor or do whatever I need to do to keep things moving forward. So hopefully this has been some useful tips to help you move away from standalone spreadsheets and try to use the system to better manage your inventory through the use of the automated purchasing functionality in the requisition worksheet. So I am going to take a quick look here and see if I have any questions. And if you have questions, feel free to put those in the question box, and I will hold a minute or two. I see folks from both the East Coast and the West Coast on this call. So we would, all of us that are in the Midwest and East Coast are getting pummeled by all this rain you send to us. By the time it gets to us, these are really bad storms. So if you could knock it off, we'd appreciate it. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions, so hopefully I provided a few tips or suggestions that'll help you do a better job in your purchasing departments. Certainly, if you have questions or we can help in a little bit more detailed fashion, feel free to reach out to myself or your Innovia customer engagement person. We're happy to come out and spend some time with your purchasing department and help you get more out of the system you already own. So thanks to everyone for taking time to attend today. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll look forward to seeing you all soon. I would mention that we do have some other webinars coming up, so check our website. The Innovia Customer Conference has been announced, and those dates are up on our website as well. So never too early to start to make your plans to attend our annual customer conference, which is in April the 24th, and then NAVUG Focus. So the user group, if you're not members of the user group, I just give you a little nudge that we think there's no better value for an NAV or Business Central user than being part of the NAVUG user group. And NAVUG Focus is in Houston in March, and we think that for the folks that really want to deep dive in particular parts of the system, that is an awesome spot to get really good knowledge that you can put into use right away. So thank you all once again. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.